Papa at the Myshire Farm, Myshire Farm Quality Quail. Today we're going to show how we make our starter cages. It has a pan, a little door that opens up here. We can show you how this hinge thing works here. It's made with 1/2 by 1/2 and 2 by 1, both of which we've been able to find pretty readily at our big box stores. And however, the 2 by 1 I can only find at a Tractor Supply, so that's a problem. So hopefully you got a Tractor Supply. The main thing, the first thing I want to tell you about is what size to build your cage. You could go about that in a very logical fashion of I want to have so many birds and I need so many square feet, so therefore it has to be X big. You could do that, and then you could count on having a custom tray made because you made it to something else. So what I would recommend that you find, if you're going to use the tray, to find the tray, be it this, which is a bread tray. This rascal here I bought at the restaurant, used restaurant equipment company. $5 is the going rate for a bad one. They're now selling me pretty decent ones for $5, which this is a decent one. But you don't care, you know, it's a nice sturdy tray. They can be custom made. We normally do make them custom, but we have facilities to do that here. So that was my point, was to build it around your tray as opposed to building it how big you think it should be and then not have a tray for it that you can get readily easily. So if you do find your tray, then you're going to have to calculate how many birds you can put in there, and we would recommend 3 birds per square foot for home type use. And so you could roughly say this was 4 square feet, so you could have 12 birds. You need a 3-to-1 ratio, so it's at 9 and 3 females and 3 males. So then the other thing I want to point out right now is that you can have this cage, and then we'll show you how easily it is to stack these cages. So you can have this small footprint and have 5 cages stacked up on top of one another, all of them with having trays, some automatic waters, some decent feeders that we'll get into, and so now you're 5 times the 9, so you got quite a few birds in a very small footprint that could fit in your garage or wherever. So that's a good question to ask. So the tools you're going to need, this is a really handy tool you're going to find out as opposed to using one of these. Harbor Freight, you can get them $20 or less. This is a diamond blade. Harbor Freight sells those as well. This is a very expensive blade, but they sell them for hardly nothing. Just a real quick thing, on the snips, you have a right hand snip, you have a left hand snip, and you have a straight snip. And as you get to handling these snips, you're going to find out that I think this is the right, this is the left, and this is a straight. So if you can buy them on a set, that's good. I'm not going to be using them a lot. You're going to see me grabbing this all the time, and for $20 you're going to save some time. You'll need some hog rings. This is kind of an automatic hogger, and you can, as it clips out there, it makes a little hog ring. And then this is not so automatic, and this is actually called a rabbit cage wire thing. This works a little differently, and I think that's what I'm going to use today. And this crimps around and does that. Not a very expensive tool, obviously, and these are, you know, fairly inexpensive as well.
And what are you going to use those for?
This is going to be used to crimp these guys together. So this is the first one I showed you, and then this is the rabbit ring here, which you can get a little bit tighter and a little more support. So, but it's not quite as handy as, or easy as this, or fast as this, I should say, because this one here you can just, and then you're done. But it's a little rougher. So whereas this one here is going to require you to load it for starters, and then squeeze it in here, and then squeeze it around like that. But you can see it does a little nicer job, and probably worth the time, and a lot less expensive than this. This was an Amazon purchase. It is a D-wall, and this was purchased at a feed store. You might have a hard time finding this someplace other than a grain and feed store. Likely you'll have one somewhere just outside of town. So that's that. Got a screw gun, drill, nail gun, air compressor, yaka yaka yaka. Again, I'm not going to make excuses for all the tools I have, and why don't you pan around, Zach, and just kind of show how bad we're cheating here. So yeah, that's in part my arsenal that I've collected over my lifetime. So now let's get into building the cage. I am going to build this cage the same size. As I say, we do sell these as a starter kit, mostly farm pickup because of the expense of shipping them. But I think we'll also try to make one that has a slope on it that will let the eggs come out the front. So we'll do two variations of this cage as this video proceeds. With the help of editing, I'll make 0 mistakes. Watch. So let's get a tape measure and we'll take some measurements. So if your tray is going to be this big, which is 25 3/4, we'll want to make it a little bit bigger than that, so we're going to make it 26. The other thing I want to mention at this point is when you are trying to decide how big to make things, you want to keep in mind that your wire here is 1 inch wide and 2 inches tall. So really don't bother making something 9.5 when you got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 inches. So just make it 10 inches tall. Don't make it an odd number wide when you can just make it 1 inch increments, and then you have your 1/2 inch increments on what would be your floor. And in this case we used it for the top as well. So be aware of your size of the screen you're using and try to keep increments that are going to be easy to cut your material, so you're not cutting your squares in half or anything silly like that.
Now, why do you need your tray a little bit larger, or why do you need to build it a little bit larger than your tray?
The reason you need to make your tray a little bit larger than that is, of course, so you can get it in there. So, if you had it super tight, and it will, if it gets wet or something, the wood will swell up, and then you'll be, forcing this in, and it's just never a good idea to make it too tight. If you want, if anything, you want to make it a little too loose, but keep it in mind that this is, got a slope to it, so yeah, you gotta, give this some thought time. Get an idea, sketch down on paper a little bit, and give it a little thought time as to how big everything's going to have to be. So I like to keep things as simple as possible, so that we're cutting this the same length as this guy, and the same length as that guy, and this guy is the same length as that guy. So, you could lap these differently, and then all these would be different measurements, so we're just not going to do that. So, we're going to make this guy. So this guy is going to be 25 3/4, which we're going to make 26, and then we have to add 3/4 here and 3/4 here, so that's going to be our 26, plus 1.5 inches, 2 3/4 is going to be 27 1/2. So let's just see if that's not what this is. And by golly, it is 27 1/2. So again, I'm not trying to tell you how big to make your cage. I'm more trying to tell you how to make a cage any size. Thank you, Lil. So now we're going to do this at 16 by 16 inches. So we're going to need 2 pieces of 1x4, 2 pieces of 1x4, 16 inches. And then we're going to need 2 pieces of 1 by 2, the 27.5. And then we're going to need 3 pieces of the 1 by 2. 1 piece for this, which holds the tray. 1 piece for this, which holds the screen up, and then the other side for that. So we need 3 pieces, the 1 by 2 at the 16 inches.
If you're only going to have 1 tray, would you recommend keeping the tray above the ground? Would you need something to hold the tray up if you're just going to have one cage?
Well, if this is going to be on a table, then you don't really need to have anything to hold it off the ground, because that 1 by holds it off the ground, which lets that tray slide. As you stack these up, then it kind of fixes itself as it goes up. And that's kind of why I designed it that way. So that makes the 1 by 4 here, and then the 1 by here, 1 by 2 here, 1 by 2 here. Gives you enough clearance there, and you're good to go. This is about as far as I would ever dare to have the screen, you know, a little floor joist there so that to support the screen. On our bigger cages, I think I'm down to about 8 inches, but I'm splitting these in 2. So now, I didn't used to, but you know, if they're smaller, they're still strong enough, and less space for the poop to hit. So that's what we need to do. You can buy a 1 by 2. It's 1.5 inches by 3/4. I just buy the 1 by 4s and then rip them in half, which actually makes it 1 3/4 inches, because a 1 by 4 is 3/4 by 3.5 inches. So I'm going to grab a 1 by 4, and we're going to rip it, and we'll get started.
And if you don't want to rip it, you can just go buy it.
Yep. You don't have to have a table saw to do this project. You can just simply buy the 1 by 2 and the 1 by 4 to the 27.5 inches before I rip it, and that way I can only have to make 1 cut instead of 2, and we're going to go with that. So we're going to need 3 of these guys and 2 of those guys, and that's what we got. So that's this lower portion here all cut out, and we have 1 more piece that is actually the same length as this. Again, I'm trying to keep this simplified, that we will need to cut at some point, but we don't need that right this second, so let's not stop. Let's not stop there. So, kind of self-explanatory. We're going to need 1 in the center if we're going to do this. 27.5. I do 20, which is half is 10, 7, which is 3.5, and so it's 13 3/4. Try to do that math longhand in my head, and it's sure enough 13 3/4. So that's going to be our center one. So we're going to need to do this guy. All right, so we're just going to kind of organize these pieces, and this guy here is this guy here, and it's going to go on one of these guys here like that, and then this guy over here is that guy there, and this guy's going to be underneath there like that. So all we can do at this point is nail these together, and I'm going to opt to use my staple gun, and then perhaps we'll show you how I would do it if I was going to use a screw. So the glue here would certainly be optional, but in that I'm selling some of these, I don't really want them to fall apart, and so we'll use a little glue. Sometimes you can pick these guys up in a kit form. That's the way to do it. They got a compressor and a couple nail guns. My buddy bought a really inexpensive one a long time ago, and everything's doing just fine. So this guy here, we could nail in like so. Put a little glue in that. Should have put some glue in that. And we're going to build it upside down, just for simplicity's sake. Make sure everything's nice and flush. You know, I may have used this nail gun a couple times in my lifetime, so you want to know that you may not be quite as quick with a nail gun and not worry about it. So you can envision me just building this upside down. A couple extra staples in there. Make sure they don't come out if you are using staples. I'll demonstrate a screw here. So if you were screwing it, you probably would want to put a little pilot screw in there. Reach over here and grab us some kind of screw. Ideally you want at least 1 inch penetrating into whatever you're screwing into. As a general rule of anything, this is 1 3/4 inch screw, so that just barely cuts the cheese. But now we got 3/4 and 1 inch penetration in. If you're doing these, you might want to use a coarse thread screw as opposed to a fine screw. Yeah, hope you don't mind me babbling about that sort of stuff, but it really is important as you try to build these things. So that is that. Again, trying to keep these flush. These are safety glasses I have on. They say it's important, I don't know. That's that. And flip this thing over. You can kind of see what we got. I'm going to check it for square just for giggles. They got 32 and a half, 32 and a half. That's the beauty of a miter box. It helps keep things square. So let's see if this thing fits before the glue sets on us, because we can always kind of tweak this a little bit. And yep, fits in there okay. So that's a beautiful thing. You want to be, conscious not to have a bunch of sharp edges sticking up. Now we could go to the trouble of cutting this material out and having it fit real pretty, and then put it on. We could do that, but I'm going to save a little time and nail it down first, and then cut it. So
why would you do that?
Well, it just saves a little time of marking it and measuring it and cutting a mark and yuck. You don't have to mark it now, it's already marked, you just know where to cut it. So if you're doing a small cage like this, it's not a big deal, but on a bigger cage, it wants to ripple up on you and stuff, so you kind of have to be careful of how you're working the wrinkle out of it as you will. And the other thing to keep in mind is this, somehow this stuff isn't always square. And so you got a square frame that we checked and an unsquare piece of screen. You want to kind of work your screen to the square as opposed to making your frame out of square to meet that. Now, if you were doing it, if you were cutting it out and all you had was your tin snips, you would probably want to cut it out before, because this is a little awkward. And you can cut it with this, you know, you just snip them. But, you know, and then you have to fold it up and whatever, not a big deal. But I'm spoiled, and so we're going to use this. So the reason I use a 1/2 inch here, and if all you have is 1/2 inch, you could do this with 1/2 inch. But this is more structural, so you'll notice there's no wood that I'm made up here, you know, to hold this square up straight or anything like that. So this assumes the structural integrity of this cage. Now, when you're stacking these cages, you can get away with stacking these right on top of one another, but ideally you'd be putting a leg on it, and so this really doesn't have to assume the weight of another cage if you're putting these legs on it and screwing each one to the legs. So that's, and then the other reason I do this is because you can cut these out and insert a feeder into there, and we will have a little video on how I make our feeders. I'm not sure it will be very helpful to anybody, but I'll show you anyway. And then okay, so we got this. We're talking about making this door a little smaller. We agreed that it's still probably a good idea. So we'll try to do that. So if we bring it in 6 inches on either side, it'll still be a pretty good sized door. But I think it might help birds getting out when you're opening it up for whatever reason. So if we have 6 and 6, that's going to be 12 inches. So we'll write down 12. And then we got 17 and 17, that's 34 inches, those two sides. Hi, honey. And then we got 27 on the back, so 27. Add all that, we got 73 inches by 10 and a half. And you want to zoom in here, and I want to show you what the half is about. If you can, open this up again. So here's the half. See how I bend that over? And then that way you got something to staple down to. I just staple these down, then we'll take a hammer and kind of beat them down. Different manufacturers of this stuff behave differently. Some act like it's a really hard metal and it has a lot of spring to it, which is really not a lot of fun to work with. But this last purchase that I made from Tractor Supply doesn't have quite the memory, and it's just a lot easier to work with because you're not all the time wanting to spring back on it. You see how it's kind of holding its shape when I straighten it out. The other stuff doesn't move quite as well with that. 73 inches struck out here, stretched out, got it marked. I'm going to use this diamond wheel again. The advantage of the diamond wheel is not only does it cut it, but it has abrasive on the sides, both sides. And so as you're cutting it, it's kind of sanding the sides smooth at the same time. So that's what really makes it. If you're using a snips or something, you're going to end up with a really sharp edge. That, and then as we talked about before, we're going to want 10.5, which is going to be 5.5 spaces. Now this is just stuff we had laying around. If you were making a cage, you're probably going to buy just 2-foot material, which would give you 2 cages for every go that you did. So that would work out swell if you're. I'm going to cut this end off here. One, two, three, four, 5.5. So if this were the 10-inch piece, I'm going to be probably cutting those off anyhow. I found that it's better, see how the rib is on the top here that's going this way? I found that if you bend it down this way, it tends to break a lot more easy. Whereas if it's rolling over, now I've got these ribs to the bottom, underneath it, so that when you're bending these down, it's rolling over this guy here. Otherwise, there's a weld there, and it kind of wants to come up on the weld, and it might break off. So if you can see that detail, so we're bending these down like that. You can use a little hammer, put a pair of gloves on, squish it down like that. You need them nice and square, but not too crazy because you can get a hammer on it anyway. And that's what you're going to be nailing down. That's what you're going to nail to on our little frame, these little flanges there. Okay, so we got our piece that's 73 inches long and 10.5, or which would actually be 11 inches long. 5 2-inch spaces and half a thing, which would be 11 inches long, bent over. So again, I'm going to show you how we might do this without a brake. So if you don't have a brake, you could bend these down with a hammer. Where a single one you can kind of do with your finger, but you have the resistance of all the other pieces, so it don't really work very good. And of course, we want to take note that we're bending that toward the inside, and then I'm using up one of my pieces, so it's going to be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take that down and bend that down, like so. And we can hold it up again here. That's going to go like that. And I bent this way just so we have a little more rigidity here. Otherwise that piece is just going to be flat and kind of flapping. And we'll have to whittle out some of this. You'll see we'll have to cut some of this out. Or maybe we can put that board right through there, which would be super cool. So, we got that there. And so hopefully this would be where we bend it here. If I had a pencil, there we go. I'll bend that like that. Right here. Hopefully that's going to be, what, 17 inches or something? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So that sounds right. And let's see if we can do that again. We're just going to bend it over here like that. Now we're getting a little length. It's a lot easier to do. And then that, of course, goes like that. Ba, 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 ba. And then we're going to mark this here so we can cut that. And then I think it would probably pay if we marked this here and started on the end. And with a little luck, we'll have 6 spaces here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yippee skippy. So now we're going to have to go on another corner. I don't know if you can tell that for why, but it will be surely obvious to you when you get to it. And yeah, this is going to be a bit of a challenge. Alright, so we got that. Got this one over. Like that. Smack that about the head and shoulders a little bit. Now, again, I'd be using the brake and it would have been long done, but you can see this ain't taking forever, so it's not a big deal. Hoping this is what we want. Bend that hard, bend that back, just kind of work with it. This is some really nice wire. Again, this was bought at Tractor Supply. Hope we don't get Sound effects always helps when you're doing this sort of thing. And there we go. So, this guy's going to go on here like so. Oh boy. Think I like it. Yeah, so, you know, we'd like to have everything uniform. On the other hand, just because you're doing it not as good as you could the first time, don't mean you shouldn't change it the second time. Hence whence we built 3 sets of cages around here. So it's a process. So there we have it. And now we're going to reach in there and nail this down with the nail gun. Okay, that's that. And like I mentioned before, we're going to take this hammer and beat all these ends down. See, when the staple goes in, it kind of flares it up. See how that's kind of flared up? That is a bad foot. So we smash those down, get them going down in the down direction. The downer you can get them, the better off you'll be. So now we got a pretty darn smooth surface, otherwise my hand would be shredded. So, now, sports fans, now I think we're going to put this in, and we're going to see if we can feed this through, like so, and by golly, we did, we can, and we did. So this just rests down there. If we let it rest down there, then the front of this cage, the front of the top, wouldn't have any support. See how it'd be down a half an inch or whatever. So, but it's still cool. We're going to lift it back up here where it belongs, and then we can put a staple in here. More importantly, we can put a staple here that this doesn't have a place for that to happen. So we can put a staple down here, bang and a bang, and then bang, 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 bing, bong, bong, and it will be a beautiful thing. So I think we're going to do that because these guys here that hold the door up are now going to go here. So the ones that are on the outside are going to go into these two slots now because the door is going to be smaller. Or maybe they go out here so that the door overlaps nice. Probably it will go in these second ones. So, you know, I'm used to thinking on the fly here anywho. So let's shoot a cap in this guy. If you know what I mean. Staples are just a little long. It would really hurt. Oh yeah, that would hurt. Okay, so that's that. Now we're going to make these gizmos here, and this is just a block of wood with a 1/4 inch hole in it. So let's just do that. So I'm grabbing a piece of scrap here, and we want them to be 3/4 inch by so it'd be that, and another one like that. Now on these small pieces, you could use a jigsaw and try not to cut your fingers off. Probably got a jigsaw laying around, I hope. Jigsaw. I'm going to use the band saw. Got a little square here. And we'll just do that. Yep. Cut them on a B-hitch. Cut them on a B-hitch. Ideal, maybe not, but safer than using a table saw. Boo boo, boo boo, boo boo. So.
You're just rounding the edges?
Yeah, just where I kind of had cut it a little crooked. This. Makes it look a little smarter. Alright, so So these guys are going to go right here. Right like a so. And right like a so. But first we're going to drill our holes in there for this little metal rod. And those are going to be something by something. So, went to a seminar and this Canadian guy was showing us how to drill holes right in the center of things. And he says, right in the center is right about there. And then I realized I was actually a Canadian woodworker, because that's kind of how I roll too. The point being, it just don't matter. I mean, you gotta be close. Real close is better than sort of close, but we're not building a piano. Trying to go about halfway. Okay, so these are going to turn, you know, with the holes here and the holes there. Alrighty, so let's do what? Let's do a pilot hole and a screw in that. Now the pilot hole can go all the way through. Go ahead and do that from the easy side. And we'll find the proper screw for that baby. Granddaughter organized all that stuff for me. You know you can't have her. Now we're going to put these on, and then we're probably going to have to take them back off to get the rod back in, but it'll be easier to put them on and then take them back off than to try to do all this. There we go. We've been. Okay, so rather than doing a lot of calculating and having this off and whatever, now we can measure that and call that 20 inches. So that's how long we're going to make our little metal rod. So we got our piece 1/4 inch rod here. We want 20 inches, as we said. I buy this at a scrap yard. If you're lucky enough to have a scrap yard, sometimes it's the place where you would take your aluminum cans to scrap it out. They'll have another division that sells used or scrapped out material, and that's what this is. You're basically buying it by the pound, whereas that big box you're going to buy it by the piece. For the less fortunate, that's called a hacksaw. That's actually called a chop saw or cut-off saw. So, hacksaw would work certainly just as good, and a little piece of sandpaper would do the same trick. So, I'm going to take that off and drill a little pilot hole in it this time. And And do we want to bother putting this on? Probably not, but we'll put it on here. Ouch, that was really hot. Like that. That's going to go right like that. So now we're going to make the door that'll fit on there, and we'll put the door on it before we hang it up. 5.5 spaces tall and 18 inches wide. If you were scraping for material, there's really no reason why you couldn't have the door going this way, but just to make it look a little nicer, I'm going to keep it all going this way. So, we'll get our little piece of plywood back here that we're going to cut on. And we're going to call that our half. So we're looking for so this is our half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're cutting here. And to make it a little simpler to cut, I was cutting all the other ones kind of upside down, and it was kind of getting away from me. And it's just going to be easier if we have this rib on the up so you can rest your tool against it. 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be this one. And we're going to need 18 spots. Looking for my magic marker. Is here, and the 10 is here, and the 18 is here. All right, so that's all the further we're going to cut. So we'll check this a little bit, make sure we didn't screw up too badly. And it says we did not screw up too badly. So that's all good. And to start this operation off, we don't need all these wrapped around, so you might want to cut some of them off. Again, there's a different tool for that job if you're lucky enough to have it, or lucky enough to find it, which I did not, so that's that. And I'm going to cut off, let's just cut off every other one, just for fun, just to save the operation. Now we want to be a little careful not to end up with the wrong one cut off. There we go. So that actually worked. I am going to go ahead and bend these down, and I would I'd do these on the break if I were doing it in a production mode, because it would just be a lot easier than hurting my fingers like I'm doing. But tough guy. Alright, so now we want to take this guy here and try to make sure we're putting it on the right way. This is saying it's going like this, which I think I concur. How to explain that? It's going to go on, goes on like that. So the fence is on the back side of this, which is going to hopefully give us a little more clearance when we open that up. So, this gate is not on the front side, it's on the back side. Then we're going to bend these around to make that work. And it will slide around a little bit, so We don't have to be real careful with it. So we're going to bend this around here like that. And there's a lot of YouTubes on making cages, a lot of clever cages out there, a lot of clever hinges, and I watch a lot of them just to kind of see if I want to, you know, get some good ideas. And you may, you know, there are some really good ideas out there. Using metal shelving for doors and such. Great idea if you're building a couple cages. You know, we have 3,000 birds here at the Shire, so you have to be real careful about spending that extra $5 times a bunch of cages. And this doesn't cost hardly anything. If you're buying that rod right by the pound, you know, this hinge setup costs nothing. So that's why I do it. It doesn't really take that long to make them. If you wanted to cut every 2 out and just have fewer things to bend over, boy, that would be probably okay too. I know on my bigger cages I do cut 2 out. Alright, so that is that. Now this time when we put it on, it'll stay on. Something like that. Okay. Twist that on there as best we can. Slide this guy in there. Put that there like that. And there's our door. Stays up pretty good, goes down pretty good. All looks pretty good. Should have been down just a little more, but it'll catch. And that's all groovy. So, trying to find my screw. Set it back here. Put that. Oh, screw's already back there. Huh? Bam, door. All right. So Zach asked me why I didn't cut these both at the same time. You know, the keeper holder downers, because they're slightly different. These guys here, and I guess we can take one off here to show you, because this is what I'm going to be building next. Have a little notch in them, so that this part can ride against the wood, but this part is relieved to get out of the way of it. You couldn't have a piece that was flat because you'd never get that hooked on. So you have to relieve that a little bit. And you could do that with your jigsaw. Little trick here is to do that little cut when it's on a long stick and then cut it off. Otherwise your fingers are going to be too close to the blade. Like that finger, no, not that one. But so if you had a long stick, you can hold on to it safely, cut that notch out, and then cut it off. So that is just a little more better idea. So that's what we're going to make next, and put that on there. And again, you're just looking for a scrap piece of wood. Oh, when I was cutting those pieces out for all this, it takes more than an 8-foot piece to do it all. If you only want to buy one piece of wood, you can't quite get it out of a 10-foot piece either. So if you want to go out of one piece of wood, you'll have to buy a 12-foot 1x4. So we're going to cut this 3/4 by 3/4 again, and then we're going to cut that 3/4 by 1.5 inches again, and I'm going to say that's 1.5 inches. Like yo and yo, that's what we're going to cut out to receive this door, And then we're going to cut out a yo and yo. Like that. Drill a hole in it. Bob it a big. These are a little more critical to sand down, whether you're sanding them by hand or whatever, because you're going to be, fingering these a lot, so you might as well make them comfortable. Now we're going to be drilling a clear hole through here, so it needs to be a little bit bigger so that the screw doesn't get jammed up. This is going to work. It's 1.25 inches by a big one, too big, but it's the right length, and it's got the pan head, so we're not going to split it out. If we use the same material, even no matter what we use, it's going to be 28. We have to go with 1/2 inch increments by 17.5. We're going to see that I've got 2 1/2 inch things bent down, and I think that's where we want to go. So that's going to make it 2 inches longer than what we need it. 1 inch on either side, 1 inch on the front and back. Yep. So 28 plus 2 is 30. 17.5 plus 2 is 19.5. With any kind of sheet metal project, if you're making what would be considered a pan, because if that cover was upside down, it would be a little pan, the same pan that you'd make for the bottom, you can't bend all your corners up. Think a piece of paper, you want to bend this and that's got to go. So 1 inch of that corner's got to go, and 1 inch of that corner's got to go. And you see that allows you to bend those up. Like that. So we'll see, make sure this fits. And looks like it's going to. Now we're going to need to make a few cuts on it. We got to cut this guy here out. Alright, now we're going to use these clamps here, rabbit cage clamps. Put it on there like so, and on it will go. And that's about all I can show you how to make a starter cage. Check us out, myshirefarm.com, Facebook, Myshire Farm Quality Quail. Newbie Quail Lovers is our Facebook. On Facebook is Newbie Quail Lovers. Over 3,000 people are watching us do stuff now. We sell quail. We sell quail eggs. Check us out. Ta-da! Open it up.